Hey, I'm Zemi, and welcome back to my midlife crisis. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I am not on my forever world, Zemi's Hollow, nor am I in my creative world. I am actually on ScarWorld Season 6, which is an SMP that I play on with a bunch of other players. This is the Patreon server for the YouTube content creator and Hermitcraft member, Good Times with Scar. And this world I joined about a year ago, just a little over a year ago, I guess. And I have been enjoying my time tremendously. This is the first SMP I ever played on, but I have enjoyed so much playing with this wonderful group of people. And today, because we are coming to the end of Season 6 for this server, and we're going to be starting a Season 7 soon, I thought it would be fun to show you guys a bunch of the builds that I've done over the last year on this server. So I am here with these two lovely mushrooms, one of whom keeps just showing me his butt, but that's okay. Oh, hello, squid. So I am here at my starter base for this season. I ended up building my starter base in one of the 4 cities that were established on this server. This was a Star Wars themed server this time, so we had 4 cities named after Star Wars cities. We had Naboaqua, we had this one is Geonosis Gorge, and we had Kashyyyk, and we had a bunch of other sort of Star Wars themed. But Geonosis Gorge was a bit of a steampunk theme, so I decided to build in steampunk for my theme this season. So I wanted to show you a bunch of the different builds I did, starting sort of in chronological order, because I also think it shows a bit how I sort of grew as a builder over this season. So get ready to take a tour through ScarWorld. And by the way, I'm going to stick to showing off just my own builds for this season because I don't really have permission from other people to show off their builds or show what they've been doing for this season. I'll let them do that in their own time if they want to. But this is what I built for my starter base, and as I said, this is in Geonosis Gorge. We're just going to go into free cam here, and I decided to go steampunk, and I decided to build a steampunk submersible. So here we have it. It's a small build. It's not like a huge sub. I decided to go with like wood and copper and glass feel because I felt that stayed very true to sort of the steampunk aesthetic, with the idea that, the idea of building a submarine out of wood seems very old-fashioned. I mean, I know that they had steel and things like that back then, but I kind of thought it would be a little bit more old-fashioned seeming almost. I went with this really interesting kind of bubble for the front of the craft, which you can kind of see the people steering it through there. And I think I'm really happy with the way the build turned out. It was my first time trying to build a vehicle, and so obviously I had a few issues with it, but given that it was a small build, I was really happy with the way it turned out. Let's take a look inside. So I started off with the idea of building again, a submersible that kind of looked like it's also meant to go on the surface for a little ways. So it actually has this sort of hut on top, not super, realistic in terms that it is an open door, which I just keep forgetting to put a door on there. But the idea that you could actually look through the periscope from up here, you could actually walk along on the deck up here when the submersible was at the surface, because it is going to spend some time at the surface. And then of course you also have the smokestack up here where we've got like some of the fuel coming out that's fueling, some of the smoke coming from the fuel that's fueling this. And so that's kind of the outside and exterior of the build. Inside, and then here on the dock alongside here, we've got some mushrooms that are waiting for transport. We've got some barrels. We've got some nice crane here that's lifting supplies onto the submersible, and then we also have this sort of cargo door that opens and we can go into the cargo area, and you can see that this is where the storage is. This was obviously my storage area for the first part of the season while I was getting things done. There's a little tank with like live fish in here, there's a llama, there's all kinds of other things that are stacked up here and waiting to be transported to the final destination. Now there's a little bit of a galley in here. There's like seating area, there's goat as well. I don't know why I have a goat in here, I just liked my goat. There was going to be a whole kitchen over here that I did a bunch of map art for to like look like the front of a stove and the top of a stove, and then the map art unfortunately kind of corrupted and I never did get back to putting that back together again, so unfortunately that one's a little bit unfinished. And same thing with the con area up here where we've got a couple of our people, our helmsperson and our navigator who are steering here. And I did have a bunch of map art that was on here as well that showed like radar and different dials and gauges and stuff you could press, and again it kind of corrupted. But I really love this front part where you can kind of look out, but it also looks very structural and has these structural components that are kind of obscuring your view. I did at first want to build this actually underwater, but building things underwater in Minecraft is such a pain, and I never did actually be brave enough to do it. Up here we have our crew compartments. You can actually see that this is where everybody can sleep, so everyone has their own little area. And so yeah, it's a nice small build and a nice sort of steampunk kind of style. And as I said, this was kind of my first one doing this, so I really enjoyed the experience. Let's just take a quick look. So there it is, and you can kind of see how it fits in a bit with the landscape surrounding it. I didn't really do a lot other than create this dock to sort of really build it into the landscape, which I kind of wish I had. But in the end, I think it was a fun little build and a very fun starter base to have, and I stayed here for a good number of months while I figured out what I was going to do on the rest of the server. So let's head over to my actual base that I ended up building, and we'll see what I continued on with my steampunk theme. Here we are at my main base on the ScarWorld Season 6 server, and you might be wondering why it looks like I've been swallowed by a giant monster. Well, I kind of almost have. So let's go into, this is my portal room, but let's go into free cam so that you guys can kind of see what this build is. This was my very first build at my steampunk base, and this is a steampunk anglerfish, and this is where I decided to put my portal. So I just wanted to build an anglerfish, to be honest with you. Jem built one on Hermitcraft, Gemini Tay, in season 10, and I absolutely loved. She had a little sort of small one. I wanted a nice big one, but you can kind of see I've got some cogs here that make look like kind of like I can open and close the jaw, and I've got this sort of lovely instead of a light hanging down, it's more sort of an industrial kind of looking crane apparatus that's holding up these flaming soul sands, and it's got sort of flames in the eyes. I really had fun building this as sort of my first piece, and coming through here to actually build another portal in a steampunk style. I really wanted to have sort of this very industrial and kind of copper look to it. And you can see that it is actually, let me just get out of free cam here. There we go. You can see that it is here connected to a power plant next door. I did put a little bit of a mosaic back here just to make the portal room a little bit nicer. And you can see here that I've got this whole portal connected to this power plant, which is powered by a conduit, just as something to make it look a bit more alive and a bit more like there's something actually, like there's particle effects that go on with the conduit. So it's kind of fun to do that and sort of use some of these crafters and things like that and observers on the outside to make it look a little bit more industrial. But the idea is that this is kind of powering my portal inside this giant anglerfish, and this connects to the main build of my base, which is this house. Again, I'm going to go into free cam here. So I built this kind of steampunk themed house. You can see I use things like pistons and copper bulbs a lot in the facade for this house because I wanted it to look, again, here's a crafter, really a nice, neat looking block, because I really wanted it to look very kind of industrial and steampunky. And here at the back here, we just have sort of a little seating area. And on the sides here, we've got some of these windows that they're kind of meant to look almost like a Victorian rose window, but like with all of these copper and piston elements that are meant to make it look much more steampunk and sort of retro-futuristic. So this was sort of my dock area. You can see I've got a couple sniffers here, and same thing as I had at my dock before, I've got a bunch of things waiting to be loaded onto a ship, which we'll look at in just a second. But first, let's head inside, and also because I do need to sleep. So inside this house is where all my main storage was for the season. So you can see I have a lot of storage chests here. I also have a bunch of smelters. I have all of my tables that I need, a loom, potion stand, anything else like that. I do have a couple of guards at each door as well. I've got some axolotls here because I love axolotls anywhere. I've got some Geonosian guards here. So these are actually like Geonosians from the planet Geonosis. And I've got some clone troopers over here. Now, there is a reason for this, in that I actually did build the nether tunnel from the main nether hub out to Geonosis Gorge, which I will show you guys as well. And there was a bit of a firefight going on between the clone troopers and the Geonosians, which, if any of you are familiar with the prequel Star Wars trilogy, is something that happens in the second movie from that trilogy. I've got a bunch of decorations here. These are various heads that some really amazingly talented people on the server made for the Halloween event that we had here. I've also got a little Stitch head, which I don't know, any of you who know Scar know that he absolutely hates Stitch, so we do kind of like to rub that in a little bit. But we've got all kinds of little decorative touches here. I've got some, I really love this carpet design. I love leaf litter. I can't help myself. It's just such a cool decorative tool, and being able to sort of add these little touches to corners. This is my little sleeping area up here. I didn't really do much with this, but I did put a few things. I got like a little trophy from a game that I went through this season. I actually managed to do some parkour, which was ridiculous. And yeah, just put some of my cuter little plushies up here. So we've got like a mushroom and other things like that. So yeah, here is my little bed area. And so this was my main house for the season, and this was my main base of operations. And then the next thing that I built while I was here was a ship, because I actually did want to have this as a functional port. And you can see that as we come out here, let's just go back into free cam. It just really is a much easier way to see things. You can see that this is a steampunk steamer. So it is meant to be a paddle wheeler. Again, trying to have that sort of retro futuristic look to it. And, you know, trying to have some of these, you know, different industrial elements to the outside of it. Have sort of, you know, the idea of callback to a sailing ship of having a mast up here, but it's sort of, you know, is more of a radio transmitter or antenna or something like that. And we can see that there's, you know, a couple of smokestacks at the back that have all different kinds of conduits, things like that, running that to power the steamship, to power that wheel at the back. And yeah, I had a lot of fun designing. I designed this one in creative and then brought the schematic in using Litematica. And that was sort of the first build I've ever actually done using that technique. And I really, really enjoyed it. I'd take you guys inside this one, but there isn't actually, I didn't actually get the interior done. I feel kind of bad about that. But I just kind of ran out of time. I'm doing this tour just a few days before the actual server shuts down. But we will get a copy of it that we can load in and come back to visit these bases anytime we want, which is really cool. I also want to point out that something I did along here was I tried to do a lot of landscaping. So all along the shore here, you can kind of see that I went with a sort of volcanic rock look, in that I, you know, have this sort of like dark look. I've got some tuff going through it, but it's meant to look like a very rocky and almost inhospitable shoreline along this part of it. And then I've got a seagrass meadow. I did try and use these skulk sensors for almost look like anemones or something attached to the rocks down here. And the fact that, you know, when I'm walking around, they kind of light up and change, I thought was really cool. I did use glow lichen at the water's edge here to kind of make it look almost wet, almost like it was being washed by the waves. And I did decide to, you can kind of see that I went out and I actually did create this whole sand area out here and created sort of this seagrass bed out here. And then I did do some sort of kelp. Here, hang on, let's go back into this. I sort of went out here and created some kelp reefs out here. So can we go under? Yeah, we can. So we created these kelp reefs out here with sort of the sea pickles and the kelp. So I actually did clear out a lot of the vegetation that it was just been naturally spawned in from the world generation out here, because I did want this to actually look like a separate biome and a separate, you know, thing that was actually distinctly attached to this base. So I wanted people to be able to see that there was like a very distinct seagrass bed here. I am a marine biologist, so you're going to find that I tend to do things like this with, with builds. I tend to pay a lot of attention to the natural settings. So that was this was sort of the first, but this sort of really rocky area right around the base, kind of looking volcanic and with sort of a few patches of moss and flowers in it, was my very first terraforming of this base. I don't know why my brain stalled out with that particular word. And then I ended up doing a lot of other terraforming with this base. So on either end of this rocky area, I wanted to have sort of a nice sandy area, and I decided I wanted to kind of have a tropical feel to this, so I designed some palm trees. I really liked using the composter for the base of the palm trees because it really gave that, you see palm trees, there's always like that old old pieces of it falling off, or the old growth sort of in there. And then of course cocoa beans make for fantastic coconuts, and I also have this sort of crawling vine through the sand, which I can't help it, I'm a biologist, so I sort of thought about the biology of this. There's a lot of creeping vines through sand. It was also a neat way to hide some lighting out here, so I actually hid some frog lights under here so that it kind of lit it up to be slightly more mob proof. So I actually have a couple of areas where I did sort of this sort of separate sandy tropical palm tree biome, and then I decided to design a steampunk biome, and this was kind of one of the biggest things that I did at this base, and one of the things I think I'm most proud of, because I think it was really unique. And let's again go into F4, get FreeCam to take a look at it. So I wanted to give the idea of a steampunk biome, so I kind of went with sort of some of the same colors I went with in my house, like the teal, cyan, and just using copper in the actual trees. So I designed in Creative a couple different versions of what I called a copper willow. So this is sort of the copper willow here, with the idea that it was and I just thought using the copper and the pale oak leaves made for a really neat color combination, and sort of made for a really neat, then with the pale moss as well, it really sort of made it look like it was dripping down. And using some of the candles and the grates, copper grates, and I did put a few pieces of resin here in the trees as well, just to really sort of have a few more pops of color so it didn't look completely monotone. So I did a couple of versions of those. Now you'll notice in the biome that the willows are closer to water, so they're either close to the edge of the water here, or they're sort of hugging this little river that goes up the middle, and that's kind of also a bit more true to life, is that certain trees like water a bit more. So I've got this other tree that I created in here, which I called the blue spruce, and this one is it's kind of a crazy spruce tree, and I used a lot of different blocks for it, but I did end up liking the color, and I ended up liking the way that it looked, especially the kelp blocks as kind of being like almost the interiors, almost some kind of shading. I think I learned a lot from this process. But so we've got the blue spruce that's sort of away from the water a bit, and you can see that sort of grades over here into I didn't have time to fill out the entire biome, so I just did some regular spruce trees and pale oak trees on this side of the island. But I was really happy with the way this turned out. And another thing I decided to do in this particular biome was some mushrooms. So I did have these little sort of green mushrooms that, again, an easy way to hide light sources, so they kind of have the frog lights inside of them. And then I did some orange mushrooms, so these are kind of, again, have the mycelium around them, and have, again, the glow, the shroom lights. That's the word I was looking for, shroom lights. And so another way to bring some lighting in. And then I have these sort of red mushrooms, which have end rods up there in them as sort of like the bits of the mushroom that are hanging down on the inside. And it was like kind of a nice way to sort of bring some of the lighting into this. So I think that's pretty cool looking at it from the upside. Let's take a look at it. I did really design it to be something that was walkable, and so I designed this path through here, and to really get the idea that, hey, here's all this stuff that surrounds this particular mushroom is sort of the mycelium and the brown mushrooms and sort of this dried grass look. Whereas if you look at the blue spruce, underneath you've sort of got this, netherwort, and you've got ferns and things like that. Whereas under this mushroom, you've got sort of more berries and things that are that color. So I really wanted to have that sort of distinction between each of them. So as you're walking through, you're kind of walking through zones of color and biota, and it looked very patchy, which is, of course, how a real biota actually looks in a forest. You walk through a forest, it's not evenly spread out. It kind of goes along in patches. And another fun thing I wanted to do in here was this river. And so I have this river here that has like some seagrass in it, that's got some leaves and some small drip leaf along the edges of it. And then as we go up the river, we get to a little pond, which was super fun to build. I love doing little ponds and little water features and things like that. But you can see around here, we've got the pitcher plants. And we've also got some cattails. There's this lovely design for cattails. And then we've got some of the big drip leaf in here, and sort of underneath the water, it's sort of went for a darker area in the middle to sort of make it look like maybe it was a little bit deeper, but without actually making it super deep. And then I really love having, the sort of kelps and things like that in here that just adds that sort of movement to the underwater area. So yeah, this was my copper willow blue spruce biome, and I really, really enjoyed building this. This was a big focus of my base for this season. Then we get to the actual center of my base, which is this observatory. So I spent a good bit of time designing and building this observatory, and really liked the idea of doing sort of this copper dome. I wanted to do a little bit more fancy stuff with the outside, but I never really got the chance to do it and really sort of figure out what I really wanted to do. But I was really happy with sort of the design of this. You can see that I sort of have copper, but I've also got some of the acacia wood in here, sort of just create a sort of difference in pattern and shading. And then I have this lovely actual telescope sort of pointing out here, and we can go inside and see what is actually going on inside the observatory. So this is a path that I created. So I created this whole mountain, and then I sort of landscaped it. I'm decently happy with how my terraforming went. So I did a lot of stuff where I basically built the whole thing out of tuft, and I added a lot of this moss and glowberries and sort of acacia leaves and, torch flowers and sort of, bits and pieces of color everywhere. But I think I definitely needed to plan it through a little bit better, because the actual creation of it just didn't quite go as smoothly as I'd hoped. But I had a lot of fun doing it, and I learned a lot too. But so as we come up here to the observatory, we can head up our water elevator. And inside you can see is extremely worker not safe. There's no railings anywhere in here. But one thing I tried to figure out what to do with this giant sort of area at the bottom, and I decided, you can see my happy guest got in here and has just never managed to leave. Hi there, buddy. But you can see that I did create this sort of lovely galaxy mosaic on the floor, which I really had a lot of fun with, sort of designing and making that, and sort of making it astronomical. And then, of course, we have this giant telescope, which is being suspended on this bridge. You're just going to get in the way, aren't you? And I had a lot of fun building this one and sort of designing it. You can see that I sort of built part of it, and then the very end of it, which I think one person kind of did pick up on the base tour, is that I actually did an armor stand at the end here, and I put a spyglass and made it huge, and then used that sort of stick out the end, because I couldn't figure out how to make it taper down to a fine enough point. And so I thought that might be kind of fun, and I couldn't use the whole telescope just armor stand. It wasn't quite big enough or interesting enough to look at, but sort of having it fused with the rest of the telescope, I thought ended up being really, really kind of fun. And then it's actually, you can see that it's on this platform here, which is actually sort of meant to be movable. So the idea is that it could be moved, it could be slid forward, or it could be slid back. as needed to sort of bring it in or out. And this whole dome was meant to look like it actually could spin, which I thought was kind of fun, so that it could turn around and obviously be able to see what needs to be seen. And I do enjoy the view from up here where I can see like biome and a bunch of the stuff that I did. Yeah, it's got these doors on either side of it that can slide open or slide closed like a lot of observatories had. I kind of had fun designing those as well. Let's take a look at that. So yeah, you can see kind of the doors are up there, and they're actually on struts, which they can actually be used to slide them back and forth. Yeah, so this observatory was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed building the steampunk style. And yeah, not something I've ever done before. So the last element to my base that I built like just a couple days before the server tour was this lovely hot air balloon back here, because how can you do steampunk without a hot air balloon? I actually had intended to make this whole area like a big airship base, and I just didn't have the time to do it, or really the inspiration to do it, because for me a lot of it's about, you know, trying to get a concept and then how to make that reality, and I just couldn't get the concept for it in my head. So in the end I decided to build up this, which is now a tour operator, so you can get your tickets here. And I have a famous flying sheep. This is Leica, and Leica is there she is up there, and she is what this is tethered to. Originally I tried to get a chicken up in there so it wouldn't be quite so obvious, but I could still have the tether running up to the hot air balloon, but I could not find a chicken for the life of me. So my sheep there, she ended up volunteering, was super easy to get up there. And so I have sort of this little seating area in this platform, and I have this, hang on, we're gonna go in this again. Yeah, I have this hot air balloon, which again is sort of a steampunk style. I wanted to keep the colors of the base kind of consistent, and it's got sort of, you know, these weights holding it down. I'm just kind of hoping like it was looking like this was sort of a netting on the outside of it that was holding the balloon in place, where it comes sort of up to the top, and then we've actually got sort of a little fire up here that got a chain pull on it, so you can make it go up and make it go down. I don't think Leica is actually flying it, so we do need someone in there, and just the little basket underneath. I had a lot of fun just building this, so I did build it in a very short period of time, but yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun building it. And yeah, that was kind of the last finishing touch to my base. So there we have it. So we're going to do another quick swoop around here. This was definitely the first base that I ever built anything of this scale, and it was a real learning experience for me, because I didn't sort of had a plan to start with, but I kind of threw that plan out partway through and decided to do something different, and it really brought home to me the importance of really thinking things through before I start to build, because I definitely didn't do that for parts of the space, and I think it did end up sort of hampering me in a few ways, but in the end, super happy with what I did, super happy with the way it turned out. And yeah, definitely sort of as a first steampunk effort, I thought it turned out really well. So there we go. Oh, hello. There's a horse on my face. Hello there, buddy. Oh, I'm holding a carrot. That would be why. There we go. So that is my main base, and now I'm going to take you to a couple of other builds that I did on the server. So there was a couple of events, or a couple of things that people on the server were invited to do builds of, and there was one that was a bit of a prank build that I did as well, that I'm still actually kind of proud of. So I wanted to show that to you guys as well. So one of the wonderful things about being on ScarWorld is all the other amazing builders I get to build with and to see their builds. And as I said, I'm not going to, take time out to show any of those, because of course they're not my builds, but I did want to point out these beautiful nether tunnels that we got. So there's a nether hub, and then there's nether tunnels that go out in the 4 cardinal directions, and then there are tunnels that go to people's individual portals or individual bases. So this is the only tunnel that I actually did 2 tunnel designs this time. There's one for my tunnel to my base, which was okay, but not super exciting. But this is the one I did for Geonosis Gorge, which, as I said, was one of the 4 sort of starting towns that a bunch of people did their starter bases in. And I did this to look like, because it's based on the planet Geonosis from the Attack of the Clones, which, while not the best Star Wars movie, was still, it's still a Star Wars movie and still had some great moments in it. But this is the tunnel that I built. So I tried to make it look like the Geonosian catacombs and have this sort of small feel to it. And this is where I also put in some of the armor stands with some of the Geonosian clone troopers, because of course they were wearing orange to blend in better with the desert on Geonosis, and they're in here fighting some of the Geonosians who are here and hiding in these various parts of the tunnel. So it was kind of trying to do a little bit of a storytelling element to this particular nether tunnel. There's a bunch of these little bugs. These are actually like silverfish heads, and I had a ton of them for some reason, so I thought it would be fun to pop them in here. Sort of like little rats or bugs in the maze, but they're sort of meant to be skulls and heads in the catacombs. And basically the tunnel just goes down to the nether tunnel to Geonosis Gorge. And you can see that in the roof I sort of used like rooted dirt with the roots hanging down and some stalactites to kind of give it that really old feeling, like something's growing in from above. And then used a lot of like packed mud and packed mud brick to try and create this sort of really textured look to it, and sort of make it look a little bit more enclosed as you're walking down. So yeah, I was really happy with this nether tunnel and how it turned out. So yeah, on to the next build. We are going to the end, because there was also an end hub this season. There was a bunch of crazy people who actually built in the end. Some of their builds were absolutely remarkable and amazing, but there was an end hub that got built, which was really amazing too. But we were all invited to sort of add a little build in there, or a ship or something like that coming into dock at the end. I ended up building a diner, so next we're gonna go see that. Here I am in the end at the lovely end portal, or the end hub that was built for ScarWorld Season 6, but I am here to showcase a diner that I put here, because no spaceport is complete without a space diner. And those of you who might be fans of Douglas Adams might recognize Milliways, the restaurant at the end of the universe. So I had a terrific time creating this, because it was just... I've kind of always wanted to build a bit of a 50s diner, and so what I did was build one kind of floating in space, so we even have sort of like a back entrance. I've got someone out here smoking, I've got a dumpster, and I had a great time. I had thought to maybe do a little bit more, maybe get floating on a big rock or an asteroid or something. Oh, I just threw my rockets, that's okay. But I had a great time building this. Particularly enjoyed the color scheme, because I always kind of wanted to build a bit with purple, and I'd never come up with a really good way to build with it, because let's face it, it's kind of an odd block. Anyways, I also did some armor stand work here, and here's me welcoming people to Milliways, the restaurant at the end of the universe. We come in, we have a typical diner floor. We've got some video games here. I've got Labyrinth over here. I've got Astro Blaster over here, and here's a guy playing Gotta Get the High Score. I had a lot of fun trying to figure out how to make sort of controllers and something look like a small video game. Over here we've got tables. We've got ketchup and mustard on each of the tables. We've got someone eating one of the burgers, and there's some fries. I did some custom headwork for this one, and also there's a drink there, one of the slushies. And I have some of the other custom heads that people did on the server were just amazing. I've got some of the Pride ones, because of course it is back to Pride Month again. We've got a jukebox up here, and got myself back behind the counter asking, what can I get you, hun? And up here we've got our Galaxy Burger, our Cosmic Slush, Neutron Fries, and the Dish of the Day. Those of you will recognize that as a callback to the actual book, where the Dish of the Day was a cow-like creature that came out and tried to convince you to eat it, because it had been bred to want to be eaten. I had so much fun making everything behind the counter. Here's Jelly as well. We got to have a Jelly in ScarWorld, because Jelly is one of the ninth cat added to Minecraft, which was good times with Scar's cat. So we have the slushy machines. We have some potion stands here for making other drinks, and actually in here I do have a bunch of these that anybody can come in and grab if they want. And back here in the kitchen we've got people cooking. There's got some fries, there's some dish sinks for washing up. There's someone back here, one of our chefs, and he keeps hearing a mouse scuttling around, and of course there is the mouse over in the corner. There's also garbage and compost. There was some other map art in here, but unfortunately again it kind of corrupted. And some extra mustard and ketchup. And then out the back we got one of our workers here who's out back for a smoke break saying, what are you looking at? And we've also got a dumpster with some stuff dripping out of it. And yeah, I had a really fun time designing this whole thing and just sort of making the theme and making all the detail work inside. So yeah, this was probably almost my favorite build. You can see I've got like some the Mandalorian and Grogu plushies that someone made online. We had some really amazingly talented people, so it was really nice to be able to showcase some of that as well. So yeah, had a really great time with this build, and hoping that next season I get to do something equally fun, just a little small build that sort of took up just a little bit of time that I could make sort of really personal and fun and silly. So yeah, really enjoyed this build. We're on to the next build I did, which was for our Halloween event. So it was also in the end, but a different part of the end, so I am going to head there. So apparently it is tradition on ScarWorld to have sort of different community events where we all get together in a certain place and build, and one of the ones that we like doing the most is Halloween, probably because everyone, you know, can get behind Halloween, a little bit of spookiness. This year I decided to go with Edgar Allan Poe, and this was the first time I'd ever really built a organic, which means I actually built a creature. So this was my build. Hang on, I'll take that off. There we go. So you can see it here. It says, "Quoth the Raven nevermore." This is an Edgar Allan quote from the poem The Raven, which is, you know, obviously a famous Gothic poem, and one of my favorites. I read a lot of Edgar Allan Poe. We all go through that goth phase when we're younger, don't we? So these were the first time that I ever really did a organic build. So first of all, the skull. This was an interesting build for me, trying to figure out how to do a human skull. Not super happy with how it turned out. I mean, I'm happy for a first effort, but I think I learned a lot from it. And then putting the smoke inside, I just kind of wanted to, you know, fill in some of the gaps and make it look a little bit funnier. But then the idea is that this is sort of like the skull in Edgar Allan Poe's study, and here is the raven sitting on top of it. And I had a great time designing and making the raven in creative mode. Then when I got here, it was really interesting. I didn't originally having the glass outlining it, but I got here and built in the end and realized it was a black raven with a black background, and it just was not very visible. So I went ahead and put a bunch of glass sort of outlining the wings to get the shape of the raven, and I'm really actually in the end pretty happy with how this turned out. So it was fun to build something kind of spooky and in a style that I'd never really built before. So yeah, there we have this particular build. Now I am in the shopping district of ScarWorld, which is a truly amazing place with so many cool builds and so many cool shops that people put in, and I relied on this a lot for some of my builds because some resources are just less fun to gather than others. You might think yourself, Zemi, why are you standing on the palm of an axolotl? Well, if you've seen my other videos, you know I do love axolotls, but this was my shop in the district this season, and let's go take a look. This is the Relaxolotl Spa and Wellness Center, which was a really fun idea that I had, where I was going to make sort of a place where you could come and play with axolotls if you needed to relax and buy sort of other spa related things. You can see at the back here I have kind of a fun courtyard, and I'll show that to you in a minute, with some cherry trees where there's a little container with some axolotls in it. But I just wanted it overall to have sort of a nice vibe, and of course I couldn't resist once I got into making a first couple of organics, so I couldn't resist making a little statue of an axolotl, and the cyan axolotls are my favorite, so I made a cyan axolotl to put up here. So let's go inside and take a look at what I did on the inside. And in here was my actual shop. So you can see I did do some things where I had purple Himalayan salt crystals, which was just amethysts. I had organic apple snacks, which was golden apples, and I had pore reducing face mask, which was clay, none of which I was actually trying to sell, but I had barrels full of this stuff so that we could pretend that it was kind of like spa stuff. Over here I had age-defying serum, which was of course my regeneration potion, organic wellness smoothie, which was a health potion, and a golden kombucha drink, which was the honey bottles. But I also used this as a reason to my first try at making custom heads. So I actually made some blue axolotl plushies, some cyan axolotl plushies, and some pink axolotl plushies. And I also did some specialty plushies where I did a little pink axolotl in a bucket, a blue axolotl in a hoodie, which you can see he's wearing a hoodie, and then a pink axolotl in a tank, which I had a lot of fun making these, and I was really inspired by the amazing community of other people out there who do custom heads and do custom head work. Because of course, when I say custom heads, you have to make a skin that has this as the head, and then you kill yourself, and if you have a mod like we do on the server where you get heads when you kill something or kill yourself, it pops off, and then you can place it around, and instead of looking like a head, it looks like a cute little plushie or a cute little block. Through here was the water kitten therapy, which is what we call the axolotls here on ScarWorld. So you can see I've got some axolotls swimming around free in here, and then I also have a lovely tank where we can come and view the axolotls and watch them in their natural habitat. And we can also got some benches where we can come and sit under the beautiful cherry trees. These were my first trees that I ever built. I was pretty darn happy with these, considering that I was really scared. And I have tried to build trees before, and I think incredibly unsuccessfully, but so I was super happy with the way that this worked out because I felt these trees ended up being a nice relaxing place for people to sit. So there is my shop for this season, which I had an awful lot of fun building, and I do love axolotls. Obviously brought that love into my Zemmy's Hollow base with my Temple of Mental Health, my Temple of the Angelic Axolotl. And so there really is just one final build from this season that I wanted to show you guys, and it actually has to do with the center. So I ended up having a little bit of a prank war with another member of the server named Beetle OG. And Beetle, for some reason, just had something against axolotls. Here's Beetle protesting my source, saying no to Axos. And Beetle was making some machines to perhaps kill axolotls on the server, and I just said that wasn't something that wasn't something we were going to put up with. So myself and a few other people formed the Axolotl Protection Association, and we decided to do something about it. And what I decided to do was prank his base. So we are going to go take a look at what that looked like. We are here at Beetle's base, and this was my very last build of the season. The season's going to be shutting down in a couple of days, and the server will, of course, be shut down. We'll be starting a Season 7 world, but I wanted to do one last thing. I wanted to prank Beetle's base. So you remember my axolotl statue on top of the Relaxolotl Spa and Wellness Center? Well, I did a summoning ritual with some other people, and we summoned in a giant kaiju version of the axolotl and put it on top of his base. I had so much fun designing this and making it and just trying to make something that looked like a giant axolotl, but mean, but still kind of cute. And I just had an absolute blast doing this, and I will say I was incredibly happy that I did not get caught while making this. This beta logged on it once while I was in the middle of doing it, so I had to do it real fast to make sure I didn't get caught. But I had a lot of fun. Now I think I have actually started a larger scale prank war that's probably going to go into next season, but hey, who doesn't love a good prank war? So this was my final build of the season, and I have to say I had so much fun, and I learned so much, and just absolutely blown away by all the other amazing builders on this server. And I gotta say to anyone who's not tried playing on an SMP with other people, if you find one that you can connect with that has a great community, it can be such an amazing experience getting to see everyone else's builds, getting to build stuff together. So I would highly recommend it if anyone is also a fan of any of the Hermits or Good Times with Scar. This is an amazing server to play on. But yeah, there's so many out there and so many amazing communities of Minecraft builders. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this tour of all my builds from ScarWorld Season 6, and I will see you next time.